Richard, it is so cool to be interviewing you because I'm a huge fan.
Oh, thank you very much.
So thanks for being here. So Richard is the author of Business Angel Investing. When I first set out to start Southeast Angels, to be honest, my background's not in angel investment, it's more on the startup side. So I didn't really know much about it. And the first thing I did was, right, I need to read loads of books on angel investment. And all of them were American. And I was like, right, I need to find something that actually has some UK terms in it. And your book was the one I came across that taught me a lot of the stuff I know. Richard, please tell us your kind of story and what drove you to write this book.
Let me give you a couple of words on my background. I did a PhD in engineering, which is kind of by the by. And eventually I got into venture capital, which was then what is now 3i, which is not even a pale shade of the ICFC that I joined. We were the principal source of equity to unquoted companies in the UK. We had a portfolio of 3,500 companies, and there I handled things from the startup of Microfocus, which FTSE 100 company. I put 25,000 into that. I think we had 25% at the time, so we did quite well out of that. And crematorium, funeral parlours. So I mean, a really wide range of stuff. I eventually left there, started my own company, which is called Barron's Mead, which still has its name on certain VCTs. I got involved with the Venture Capital Association. I was chair there for a year. And over the years, I became interested in angel investing, and come about 2006, I started doing it more seriously. And from 2018, I said, hey, that's what I do. I'm a professional business angel. So I've got a VC background, and I've got a strong angel experience. And all sorts of things echo out from what we've heard today. For example, do not think VCs are great at due diligence. Let me offer you 3 examples. WeWorks. Masayoshi Son of SoftBank came to visit Adam Newman of WeWorks. He was an hour and a half late, got a quarter of an hour left. He said, show me around, Adam, come into the taxi, I'll write a term sheet on $4 billion. I mean, he eventually lost $14 billion, but let's dwell on that. Another one, Theranos, founder in jail. Did anybody do any due diligence on that? All I can say to you is I have a very, very talented friend in America, a very serious chemist. She was shown the Theranos papers at an early stage, and she said, it will never work. Did the VCs pay attention to that? No, they did not. My final example would be FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried. Sequoia, very, very well-regarded VC, put $250 million in. Did they do any due diligence? Clearly not. Did they have a director on the board? Clearly not, because when the liquidator went in, he said, I've never seen such a paucity of financial controls in any business in the 30 years I've been doing wind-ups. Sequoia had to apologise for that investment because it was all over their website. They had to, worst thing of all for VCs, they had to reduce the fees on their fund. So do not think that VCs necessarily do great due diligence, and do not think you should trust VCs. I come from that background, because they like to screw angels. However, the story John Prideaux told earlier about Boku, his path to where he is today, as it happens, by merest coincidence, I'm chair of Boku. And I got involved in that when it was still private. In fact, I met John through the failure that he was talking about, called Shop Creator. And when I joined the board, and I was invited by John to join the board, we having developed a mutual respect through this failure, the board was entirely Silicon Valley VCs. They needed money. John talked about the convertible loan he raised. Before my first board meeting, I got the papers. I read the papers, and there was this convertible loan note on the table and the ordinary board papers. And I said, John, I've got to speak to you before the meeting. The terms of this convertible loan are ludicrously greedy. He said, oh, yes, he said, it's the angels screwing the VCs. Because they were all in old funds, and as you know, they're time-limited funds. They couldn't easily put the money up. So there are all kinds of cautionary tales. But what I tried to do in here is do something that nobody else had ever done, as far as I'd been aware, which was to actually try and publish results. Now, why did I publish my results? Partly because I'm an obsessive record keeper, so I actually had them. And I think if you look to most angels, they simply can't really tell you how much money did you invest, how much money have you made over time, and what's the current portfolio's worth. Now, give me some analysis of your experience. People don't, it's amazing that people don't do that. And another thing I'd like to comment on, you're not getting a chance to ask me questions here, is failure. We had some comments earlier about failure. The Americans value failure more highly than we do. We tend to see it as a bad thing. And there is a research report, which is quoted in there somewhere, about correlation of success in business and future success. It is a weak correlation. You start a company, it becomes a massive success, you sell it and you made a load of money. You now think you rule the world, and you think that was all to do with your brilliance. Of course your brilliance came into it, but being in the right place at the right time and a little word called luck was probably important. And maybe that's why, I don't know if you know, this is also published research, Dragon's Den. You all know Dragon's Den if you've ever watched it. An academic report showed that random selection would have got you better results than the dragons did. Why is that? I suspect the answer is they're all entrepreneurs, they're not investors, and investing is actually a specific skill. Some of the people we heard today were entrepreneurs, may still be entrepreneurs, that have learnt investments as a specific skill. And then just let me comment on risk-taking. Fundamentally, we're taking risk as angels. We're investing at an early stage, we're in equity. Fundamentally, we're taking risk. You have to learn to control that risk. Now, part of it is you will not get many winners. Anybody who says they've got loads of winners is either lying or some sort of god. And it's of course, you're going to take a view as to which you think are going to be winners or you wouldn't put money in. But I found, when I look back, and I do this sort of thing in the book, I've got a poor correlation between what I thought was going to be the best one and what I thought might be the weakest one. My initial assessment was often wrong. And of course, the real test of whether an entrepreneur is any good is with hindsight. You can do some work initially, but it's with hindsight. And let me add another little flavour on failure. I did it's D-Day today. I did a D-Day walk a few years ago where we walked along the D-Day landing beaches. Not all of them, it's about 44 miles. We did half of them in a day. And I walked with an SAS instructor. And I developed a back problem. And as I'm going along about 15 miles, I was starting to lean over a bit. And he said, I recognise that. He said, it's a muscle problem in the back. We get it in the SAS trainees. And he said, what happens is if you don't lie down and stretch out now, eventually you'll fall over. And what happens if you're an SAS trainee? You fall over, your backpack falls back, hits the back of your head, you break your nose. And who do they recruit? They recruit the chap who falls over and refuses to give up, and the chap who stays behind and helps him, not the one who steams down the road and wins the race. It's all about working together as a team. And again, I met by chance head of Special Forces America. I met him in a ski lodge over a cup of coffee, discovered he was Special Forces. And his comment was, when we recruit, you know these stories, they recruit sort of 2 out of 100 people. He said, we never recruit anybody, all young people, who've not had failures in their life. Because you have to learn to deal with failure in the army. You will be failing a lot of the time. You have to learn how to come out the other side. And for me, the entrepreneur that matters most is the one who is stupid enough to not give up. I mean, pig-headed enough, because you will have near-death experiences. And my final comment on this will be, which will hopefully make John over there smile, Boku. When Boku went public, the chairman, who was a founder, stood up and talked about the near-death experiences. And almost all startups will have near-death experiences. Might be running for money, might be product fit with the market, all sorts of things. And my favourite story from Boku was the chairman said he'd ceased to be CEO, he'd hired in a CEO, and one day he got an email from the CEO saying, if you receive this email, Mark, I am in prison. An awkward moment.
Great answer to my question. Fantastic. No.
I was trying to stop you asking the second question.
Great. So, a couple of quick fires for you in that case.
Right.
I think today we're hearing a lot of stories, just kind of the general kind of stories and experiences of the angels, and a lot of angels go into this with passion because it's something they want and enjoy doing. But you've done quite a bit of research and looked at the data. Can you just share like some of the key takeaways that you found from the research you did for the book in terms of almost the science math side of it? Like, what do you need to do? How many companies you need to invest in to be successful as an angel?
Well, there is research. There isn't research on on overall angel returns, and I think it's hard to collect that data because either people won't share it or they don't keep the records. But there is some known stuff. I mean, people will admit how many failures and successes they've had, and they were quoted earlier. Actually, if you do 10 investments, you'll do really quite well if 2 of them are decent successes. By decent, I mean 5 times plus success. You are going to lose most of them in one shape, form or another. And the classic American expression of the living dead, the company that stays alive but isn't worth anything, that's not much use to you as an investor. So there is quite a lot of research, but what I tried to do was by analysing my own data, to try and learn things that perhaps hadn't occurred to me. For example, I learned to focus. I know some of the speakers already were doing that. Because I come from a background investing in everything, I learned to focus, in my case, in technology and in particular in business-to-business software. Because then I knew something about the market. I could make introductions, that sort of thing. I learned that I'm addicted. I mean, I am going to form the second AA, and not Angels Anonymous, because it is a drug. I admit it's a drug. I've got a drug addiction, which is backing early stage companies. And I've backed about, as an angel, I've backed a sort of 65, 70 in total. I've done a lot more rounds than that because typically, the conversation came up earlier, didn't it? Typically, you'll get asked for more money. And I do not look at the valuation of a company. You must remember a unicorn is a mythical beast. WeWorks was worth $45 billion. There's only one person who made money out of WeWorks, and that was Adam Newman, because he was a clever clogs, and he made probably $1 billion, by some of which came from SoftBank. And the value that matters is, what's the value of my holding? I paid £1 a share. Am I selling it for £5, £10, £25? The value of the company isn't relevant to that. So if you're raising lots and lots of money, because that's the nature of the beast, the thing becomes valuable and more valuable. That's not to say your value necessarily rises sharply as you get these increases.
So does that mean you're not too bothered about how big the valuation is, or?
Yes, I'm very bothered about the valuation because I know I'm going to lose most of my money.
Okay.
So I want to make, in the better ones, at least 10 times my money. So I look at the company's presentation to me and say, can I see a realistic possibility of making 10 times my money? Mm-hmm. I don't believe forecasts, because a very startup company, the projections are just for the birds, really. There's so many assumptions. Do I think I could make 10 times my money? Now that says, if I think this company might be worth 50 million, I mustn't invest it valued at more than 5 million. So it gives me a clue as to what's a realistic valuation. And I play financial games, like, we all as angel investors get our money back before anybody gets a profit. Most people don't think of that way of investing, and you can do that within the rules perfectly easily. So back to you.
Great. So I wanted to, we've talked about this before around, some angels have this approach of they go for all the moonshot ideas, and they go under the impression that they're going to invest in the real outlier ideas and they're going to have a high failure rate. But the ones that do win are going to be huge return. And then others prefer a more kind of conservative approach where they know they invest in everything that will make around a 10x return, and that will be enough. What's your
But you don't know. That's the problem. You really don't know. I mean, my biggest ever winner, which one could have made between 100 and 250 times money, depending exactly when you got out, because it did go public and eventually was bought off the market. It raised 1.5 million, valued at 4 million in 2006, and it raised no more money till it went public in 2016. And it was sold off the market for $250 million. I don't like things that raise lots and lots of money. It tends to be consumer-facing, and where does that money go? Marketing and advertising. And I only know one thing about marketing, and that is you always spend the budget. And by the way, because it's a challenger bank, I know people have done very well with certain challenger banks, but because it's a challenger bank, or something like a challenger bank, everybody can see how awful the banking system is, so lots of people come up with a similar idea. So I like things that are rather below the radar, things you haven't heard of. Well, for example, the public company, Boku, that John and I have both been involved with, still are involved with, people haven't heard of it. It's a payments company, people haven't heard of it because it doesn't appear. And yet our customers are all the big American internet companies. Our revenue is dominated by the big American internet companies. All of them are customers. But why would anybody else in this room have heard the name? Yeah. And that's what I prefer. I prefer to be below the radar rather than some flashy name that I can see when I watch my football matches. It's flashing along the...
So I know a lot of people in this room will have made a few angel investments, kind of done it, got started, but that are looking to professionalize a little bit and become smarter investors. Yeah. What advice would you give to them? What are the main things they need to be doing?
I think that they mustn't think of making one investment. That is just pure gambling because the risks are high. You've got to make at least 10. If I say you're only likely to get 1 or possibly 2 in 10 winners, you need to make at least make at least 10, not all at once. I think investing in things you understand helps enormously because you pick up the bullshit. If you can add some value, not necessarily being on the board, but by making introductions or whatever. Or in my case, I've been on lots of boards, and for me, and it echoes back, I think, to a comment that Peter Cowley made earlier. For me, one of the greatest satisfactions is not making the money, it's solving what might have been an existential problem. That company I described that made 200 times people's money, there was an existential moment when the VCs and the management, I thought they were going to punch each other. And I managed to come up with a solution that kept everybody calm and took the heat out of it, and we solved the structure problem. Basically the VCs wanted yield on their money now, and the management was saying, but every penny that comes in from revenue goes into developing the business, and we found a solution to that. And that is hugely satisfying. It's part of the give back, which Peter talked about.
Amazing. And Richard, you published this book 3 years ago now, right?
Yeah.
About 3 years ago?
Yeah.
What's kind of changed since then? What would you put in the book today?
Well, I have actually learned quite a lot more since, so I would put some modifications of some of the things I say. But the main thing that's changed, which was commented on during the day, is the market, the funding market. Now, let's be clear. What happened in 2022 when it became, FOMO, fear of missing out, and everybody threw many things, and valuations were irrelevant because everything was going to be worth $1 billion. And, of course, the only value that matters is the value when there's liquidity. Everything else is bullshit. If you can sell your shares at £10, they're worth £10. If he's put some money in at £10, that's not, it is nothing like as good. But that is part of an established cycle. Look at the dot-com era, same sort of thing, it comes down. When you look at venture capital statistics, remember venture capital funds are funded by pension funds and the like. They're making returns to them, and there's heavy research on returns there. The VC makes most money by investing when times are hard and getting out when times are great, not the other way around. And so we're only seeing, we've seen a development in the VC industry, the angel industry, the funding industry, over a number of decades, but that cyclicality is just fundamental to the way it is, and you just have to live through it.
And is now a good time?
Now is a better time to be investing than 2 years ago because valuations are more realistic. You can, as an investor, you're interested in the terms that suit you, not the terms that some startup entrepreneur says, well, I'm going to be worth, $1 billion in 3 years' time. Well, if somebody says that, you probably are best not believing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to close up, Richard, I asked a few other people around what kind of future they're investing in, and I know you kind of stay in your lane in terms of your industry focus, but what are you most excited about for the areas that you're investing in today? Well,
now what I'm starting now to see is a return to the possibility of exiting. We've been through a really horrible period for 18 months or so where exits have been very, very few and far between. IPOs, but most of the time as angels, you're not going to see IPOs. That's the least common exit. It'll be a trade sale or a sale to private equity. What has been missing from the market in the last 18 months or so is the strategic trade buyer, because they're worried about inflation, COVID, something. And you get your best returns when somebody comes along strategically and says, I want this because in my hands, this thing will be really, we can sell it down our channel. And I had a business that we sold, ironically, 2 weeks before COVID, before the lockdown, and it was out of the blue offer at 22 times revenue. They weren't buying that on some KPI. They were buying that because in their hands, that product could be sold to all their customers. And that's what you're looking to do. I've just been involved in a sale, which we made 8.5 times our money. And I'm just about to start another one, which is heavily into the cloud, you'd be thrilled to know, where I'm hoping we can get a strategic buyer and we'll make a lot of money out of it. But it will have been a 15-year ride.
All right. Thank you so much, Richard.
Thank you.